What if I told you that humanity's very first pandemic might have reshaped the course of world history over 1,400 years ago, and we're only now discovering the smoking gun evidence that proves it? Scientists have just uncovered groundbreaking genetic proof that finally solves one of history's most devastating medical mysteries. What exactly caused the catastrophic Plague of Justinian that may have been our planet's inaugural pandemic experience? But here's where it gets controversial. This ancient disease outbreak didn't just kill millions of people. Some historians argue it actually helped topple one of the world's greatest empires, though others fiercely disagree with this interpretation. Let me paint you a picture of what happened back in 541 CE. Imagine you're living in the bustling port city of Pelusium in Lower Egypt when reports start trickling in about a mysterious, deadly illness. Within months, this terrifying disease had hitchhiked along major trade routes, spreading its deadly tentacles throughout the entire Byzantine Empire like a medieval version of a viral outbreak. The situation became so dire in Constantinople, what we know today as Istanbul, that even Emperor Justinian I himself fell seriously ill. Fortunately for him, he managed to pull through and recover. However, the ordinary citizens of his capital city weren't nearly as lucky. Picture this. Over just 4 months, tens of thousands of people perished from this relentless disease. The death toll became so overwhelming that Emperor Justinian had to make some pretty grim executive decisions. He ordered workers to dig massive burial pits to handle all the corpses. When even those enormous graves couldn't accommodate the sheer number of bodies, authorities resorted to stuffing deceased victims inside the towers of the city's defensive walls, then covering them with quicklime to speed up the decomposition process. Talk about a public health nightmare of epic proportions. This wasn't just a brief localized outbreak either. The disease continued its westward march across Europe, popping up in recurring waves of death and destruction for several centuries, before mysteriously vanishing around 750 CE. When historians crunch the numbers, the estimated death toll is absolutely staggering. Somewhere between 30 and 50 million human lives lost. And this is the part most people miss. Some scholars believe this pandemic played a significant role in weakening and eventually contributing to the downfall of the mighty Byzantine Empire. However, this theory sparks heated debates among historians, with others arguing that additional political and economic factors were far more responsible for the empire's eventual decline. For decades, medical historians and scientists suspected that Yersinia pestis, the same nasty bacterium responsible for causing plague, was the culprit behind this ancient catastrophe. This made logical sense given the reported symptoms and effects described in historical accounts. Yet despite finding traces of this bacterium in remote European villages, thousands of kilometers away from the outbreak center, researchers had never discovered any direct evidence within the Byzantine Empire itself, right at the pandemic's ground zero. Until now, that is. A team of determined scientists decided to investigate an ancient Roman arena that had been converted into a massive burial ground during the mid-6th to early 7th century CE. What they discovered there has completely rewritten our understanding of pandemic history. The Jerash site offers a rare glimpse of how ancient societies responded to public health disaster, explains Reyes H.Y. Jang, the lead researcher and associate professor at the University of South Florida College of Public Health. Jerash was one of the key cities of the Eastern Roman Empire, a documented trade hub with magnificent structures. That a venue once built for entertainment and civic pride became a mass cemetery in a time of emergency shows how urban centers were very likely overwhelmed. Think about that for a moment. An arena where people once cheered for gladiators and enjoyed public spectacles was transformed into a makeshift morgue. It's a powerful reminder of how quickly civilized society can be turned upside down when a pandemic strikes. The breakthrough came when researchers employed cutting-edge ancient DNA extraction techniques on human remains found at the site. Using targeted ancient DNA techniques, We successfully recovered and sequenced genetic material from 8 human teeth, excavated from burial chambers beneath the former Roman hippodrome in Jerash, a city just 200 miles from ancient Pelusium, explains Greg Okori-Crow, co-author and research professor at Florida Atlantic University's Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute. What they found was nothing short of remarkable. Every single victim they tested had nearly identical strains of Y. pestis coursing through their systems when they died. This genetic fingerprint confirms that the bacterium was definitely present during the pandemic's initial phases and suggests that the outbreak moved through the population with lightning speed, leaving devastatingly high mortality rates in its wake. This discovery provides the long-sought definitive proof of Y. pestis at the epicenter of the Plague of Justinian, Zhang emphasizes. For centuries, we've relied on written accounts describing a devastating disease, but lacked any hard biological evidence of plague's presence. Our findings provide the missing piece of that puzzle, offering the first direct genetic window into how this pandemic unfolded at the heart of the empire. But here's where things get really interesting from a modern perspective, and slightly unsettling. This research isn't just about satisfying historical curiosity. It could provide crucial insights into how contemporary diseases evolve and spread. And before you breathe a sigh of relief thinking plague is ancient history, let me remind you that people still contract plague today in various parts of the world. The research team conducted a separate comparative study analyzing this ancient strain alongside other historical plague genomes and modern-day examples of Y. pestis, spanning from the Neolithic and Bronze Age all the way to present times. Their findings challenge some previously held assumptions about how pandemic-causing diseases emerge. We show that pandemic-causing lineages did not arise from a single ancestral strain, but instead emerged independently along deep branches of the Y. pestis phylogeny. The researchers explain in their published work. In simpler terms, this means that different plague pandemics throughout history didn't all stem from one common ancestor bug. Instead, multiple versions evolved separately and independently caused massive outbreaks. What's particularly fascinating is that pandemic-associated Y. pestis strains were found exclusively in human remains and showed clear signs of evolving locally over time. This suggests that the bacterium was actively adapting and changing as it spread from person to person during outbreaks. Driven by human transmission patterns. Rather than coming from a single source, it appears that plague outbreaks are driven by intricate, regionally based disease reservoirs, with repeated spillovers into human populations occurring across thousands of years. The research team isn't stopping here either. Their next investigation will take them to Lazaretto Vecchio, Venice's notorious plague island, where sick individuals were quarantined during historical outbreaks. They're studying a disease that has this eerie ability to lie dormant but never completely disappear from our world. We've been wrestling with plague for a few thousand years and people still die from it today, Jiang points out. Like COVID, it continues to evolve, and containment measures evidently can't get rid of it. We have to be careful, but the threat will never go away. That last statement should give us all pause for thought. Here we are in 2025, having just lived through our own global pandemic, and we're learning that humanity has been playing the same dangerous game with infectious diseases for millennia. So here's my controversial question for you. Given that we now have definitive proof that pandemics have been reshaping human civilization for over 1,400 years, and that disease-causing organisms continue evolving and adapting alongside us, are we being naive to think we can ever truly defeat pandemic threats? Or should we instead focus on learning to coexist with these biological challenges more intelligently? What do you think? Was the Plague of Justinian really powerful enough to bring down an empire? Or are historians overestimating its impact compared to other political and economic factors? And more importantly, what lessons from this ancient pandemic should we be applying to our modern public health strategies? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.